Welcome to A Salt and Buttery with Intent to Satisfy. Today we're going to make Upma. It's a traditional Indian breakfast dish, okay? And there are as many different recipes and ways of doing this as there are kitchens, or families. The recipes tend to be passed down in families, but someone was nice enough to give me at least one version, and we'll work through this. It is possible to do it, okay? There are a couple specialty ingredients, but there are also some alternates that we can use, so I will let you know what those are, including in the list of ingredients that I post. So, here we go. The first ingredient that we need it's called Sooji, okay? But really what we're more familiar with seeing it as, is cream of wheat. So, the first thing that we need to do with this, though, is we need to lightly toast the wheat farina. So, this is not something that can be made for someone who is gluten intolerant. Okay, because the main ingredient is wheat. But this is a really nice vegetarian breakfast. It is really low in fat. There are a couple other options that you can make, and you can make it pretty darn spicy. It all depends on what you prefer. So, like I said, the first thing we're doing is we are lightly toasting the wheat farina. Like I said, it's called Sooji if you're picking it up in an Indian market. It's called cream of wheat if you're picking it up in the cereal aisle in an American grocery store. Like I said, it is a wheat farina. Now what we're doing is we're lightly, basically just like warming it up so that we draw out some of that smell. You'll be able to smell it, but we want to keep it a white color or whitish color. We don't want to actually brown it. So, like I said, what we're doing is we're really lightly toasting this. Now, if you really like this, one trick that you can do to save yourself time later is you can get a large container of the wheat farina and toast it all at once. That way it's done. And then you can totally skip this step, save yourself some time, and you've got it done. Now, this does not take long to do because the grains are very, very fine, as you can see, and we don't want it to actually turn brown, because that means it's over toasted and it's close to burned at that point, which would be an unpleasant flavor. Now this, yeah, smell that? Yeah, it's almost kind of a slightly nutty flavor. So we have this part done, and it does not take long to do this, okay? So I'm going to pause this, put this into a bowl so that I can then move on to the next step. Okay, now for the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to put some oil in a pan. Okay, oil in the pan. And then we're going to start adding some ingredients. One of the first things we need to add is some mustard seed and some celery seed. Mustard seed and cumin seed. Okay. If you really want celery seed, you can do that too. Like I said, there is many different versions of this as there are households. So, it is all a matter of personal preference. We want to heat this up to draw out the flavors. So mustard seed and cumin seed are in there, and they're starting to heat up because I've already put the oil in, and when it gets hot enough, if the oil's already hot enough, it'll crackle. okay? That means it is definitely hot enough. But you will be adding more things to this, so you probably want to be careful about how hot you get this oil, because it can splatter. Just a word of caution. Now, this will bring out the flavors, and you'll be able to smell these, and it'll start making the kitchen smell wonderful. So like I said, this is a little bit different. This is not your typical American style breakfast, but oh, see, we're getting some crackling. Almost like what popcorn does. Okay, so now that we have that going, oh, and we're trying to lose some of our spices, so here, let's not lose our spices. Okay, now what we're going to do is you can use any type of basically nut, bean that you want for. I like to use something like lentils, but you can use chickpeas. You can use kidney beans. You can use almost any type of bean that you want for this. Now, what we're going to do here is we're just going to get them going a little bit. And at this point, if you're adding cashews, you would add the cashews to it. I'm not doing that this time. You can add cashews. You can add some peanuts. But this is what's going to provide most of the protein part. I know wheat has a little bit of protein in it, but this is the protein part that you're adding. Okay? So, now, then once you've added the cashews to this, if you wish at this point, you don't want to burn them, you just want them to be nicely browned, kind of like nice light brown. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to add some chili. At this point is when you can control how hot you make this dish. I like to use about 2 jalapenos, seeded and chopped. And like I said, this is the point when you can control how hot it gets. Okay. Now, we're going to add some ginger and some curry leaves. Now, you cannot get away with using curry powder instead of curry leaves. I'm sorry about that. But what you can use instead of the curry leaves are, you can use some lemon basil, you can use some cilantro, or some flat leaf Italian parsley, or some really finely crumbled up bay leaves to get the same flavor profile. Okay, but now for the ginger, you want either grated or really finely chopped. And one thing that I've found that is useful for this, that saves me a lot of effort, is I actually get a pre-grated, pre-ground up stir-in paste for the ginger. Saves me a lot of work. I mean, I spend enough time in the kitchen as it is. Let's save myself a little bit of effort, okay? Now we have the nice flavor coming in here. This smells so good already. It's really tempting. But don't eat it yet, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to add the chopped up onion. Now, the order that we do these is actually pretty important because certain things, as you know, cook faster than others. And you want to get the maximum flavor that you can out of this dish. Now, you don't need any specialty cooking tools for this. You don't need any. You can find most of the ingredients in a pretty decently stocked kitchen or grocery store. Okay. Now, one of the things that's going to be a little bit harder is, now this is a specialty ingredient. Okay. It's this. I don't know how to actually pronounce that properly, but the short-term name for it, as you saw on the label, is Hing. We use just a tiny pinch of this, just a little tiny bit, about 1/8 of a teaspoon. But what it does is it smells, okay, that spice does not on its own smell very good before it's heated up, before it's added to anything. It smells almost like dirty feet. But it tastes, as it adds almost like a lemony taste to it. Now, it doesn't smell lemony, but it does add like a hint of an almost lemon flavor to it. It's kind of an interesting, almost an illusion spice. Okay. Now, once the onions are well cooked, okay, we're going to be adding some veggies. You can add carrots, you can add green beans, you can add corn. Some people add some finely chopped up potato. And I know, potato isn't technically a traditional Indian dish, but a lot of American Indian dishes, not Native American dishes, but people from India moving to America, a lot of their families like potatoes. Okay. Now, for the beans that we added and for the vegetables, we're actually using some pre-cooked ones. That'll save some work, let you use a little bit of the leftovers. Hey, you know, because who doesn't occasionally keep that bowl of leftover veggies in their refrigerator far longer than they probably should before they throw it away? So, we are now adding our veggies. And I've actually used to save myself some effort, I'm using a combination of some from a bag of frozen vegetables. It saves some work, keeps me from having to finally chop up the carrots and all that fun stuff, and it still provides exactly what I need for this. Like I said, hey, if we can save some work on this, no problem. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add 2.5 cups of water. There we go. Two and a half cups of water. We're going to bring this to a boil, and then we're going to add the lightly toasted wheat farina that we did earlier. Okay, once you've brought the water to a boil, turn it down to a simmer. Otherwise, it'll cook too fast and make everything lumpy. Now, at this point, I like to add the salt, but I like to use a seasoned salt instead. I like the flavor better. But it's entirely up to you. You can use a seasoned salt. You can use a plain salt. If you're using regular salt, I really recommend using a non-iodized salt. Okay, the iodine in the salt can change the flavor a bit and cause ill tastes. But if that is what you prefer, then now we're going to slowly pour the toasted wheat farina into the water. Stirring, stirring, stirring so we don't get lumps, because I hate it when it gets lumpy. Okay. See what we're getting here? This is almost perfect. Now, just get it to be a little bit thicker. It should only take about 2 minutes maximum at this time. But this is the texture that I want. See, it's nice, it's thick, but it's not gloppy. Okay. Now, at this point, you can add some peanuts. You can add some lemon juice. You can add some coconut. But one thing, if you can, that you should add is either some ghee, which is a clarified butter, or some butter. And this is another one of the things that is to taste. Okay, if you don't happen to like the butter part, skip it. This is not a dish that lends itself very well to sweet, so you're not going to want to add sugar to this. Well, you can. If you do, let me know how it turns out. I hope it works for you. I recommend not adding sugar to this, though, because the whole thing about this, it is more of a savory breakfast instead of a sweet. And it's different from the traditional American breakfast dishes, but it is well worth the effort. Give it a try. There are so many ways you can do this. So have some fun with this. You can change up so many things. You can change the spice level depending on how much and what type of chilies you use. If you use an Indian chili, it is that those chilies tend to be a little bit spicier. Okay, but you probably already know that. If you want to use a roasted chili, go ahead and do that. That's going to change the flavor profile, but it will probably taste really good. So, once again, this is a salt and buttery with intent to satisfy, and thank you. And let me know what you think.